If I could have your attention, please. I'd like to call our meeting to order. This is the July meeting of the Wilson County Board of Zoning Appeals. Before we get started, the state has passed a new law that was effective July the 1st. I'm going to ask the county attorney if I could see. Hey, you're right there. Oh, you're ready to queue up there. Okay. If you would, Mr. Jennings, tell us how we need to address this new law or conduct our meeting differently.
All right, as Chairman Thompson said, the state passed a new law effective July 1, so this is your first meeting under it, requiring a public comment period at every public meeting. That's not a problem for y'all because of everything that comes before you. You allow people to speak and you do a very good job. Sometimes they speak so much you go to lunchtime. And as I told Mr. Chairman Thompson, it's probably a solution in search of a problem. But what we need to do is we have put a provision on there for public comment. It should not change what y'all do. As the chairman calls the case, let people that are on that case speak to it. The public comment period is simply for somebody who wants to speak to y'all that doesn't have anything on the agenda. As Rusty and I were talking about on the way in the past, sometimes at the end of a meeting, somebody'd say, well, I just want to ask y'all about something. What it does for them is it advances them to the first. Other than that, your business is just like you've always done. So from now on, the chairman will call for public comment, but you'll probably have to explain to the folks that they're here to speak on individual cases. You don't want everybody talking at the same time and talking on 7 or 8 different cases.
Does the law stipulate it has to be before the meeting starts?
It does say that it has to be early in the meeting. I forget what the wording is.
So we need to do that first.
Yeah, I would, and it also says in there that you can put reasonable restrictions on it. Most of the time, the reasonable restrictions are a time limit or that somebody can't come in here and attack you personally or attack you as a board or attack the planning office or attack the county attorney. Don't let them do that either, okay? That's what it's designed for. It's not a problem y'all have. Apparently in some parts of the state it is. So, but all the meetings I attend have time for people to comment. They don't shut anybody out. So I've got to go to court, but I'll be back as soon as I can get done.
Okay. And well, one before you go, it is my understanding that anybody that wants to take advantage of this public comment period needs to sign a roster beforehand.
They do, and Miss Georgia has actually prepared a roster for that, and then for each case, which I don't think that's required, but she does a great job, and she's carried on this morning in a great way. So she's got you covered on that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank y'all. If y'all want to get done before I get back, it'll be all right.
I wouldn't count on it.
They are, that's too.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to summarize, this new law doesn't change the way we do business at all. This just provides an additional public comment period for someone who wishes to address the board prior to the meeting in regard to a case that's not on the agenda or has some question or some comment. So is there anyone who has requested by way of the roster to participate in the public comment period this morning? And now we will still have a public comment period on every case. This is for someone who wants to speak about an issue that's not on the agenda. So if you're here about an agenda item, we'll call for that in the regular course of our meeting. And I wouldn't suspect this would be anybody because we're just now getting familiar with this law. But if anyone signed up on the roster and wishes to speak, please say so at this time. Okay. All right. So there's no one to speak during the public comment period. As I call each case, I'll read the case. Our staff is here and they have made recommendations to us in regard to the case. So Mr. Lawless will read the staff comments. The board will consider those comments from the staff as we're rendering our decision. After he reads the staff comments, I'll ask whoever's representing the case to come forward and they can give any comments they'd like to give. And then after the applicant has had an opportunity to address the board, then we'll call for anyone else who wishes to comment on the case, either in favor of approval or in favor of denial. So that will be the course of our business this morning. Before we get into the regular agenda, do we have anyone who wishes to withdraw a case or defer to a later meeting?
Mr. Chair, I do have one email regarding case 4103. On Tuesday, July 18th, the applicant emailed the staff requesting deferral to the August 17th meeting on behalf of some personal issues that popped up for today.
Okay, we have a request for 4103 to be deferred to August. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second? I will second. And any discussion? If not, all in favor of the deferral, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. And the ayes have it. Okay, is anyone else to be deferred to a later meeting or to withdraw? And if not, then our meeting agenda will remain as published. Turning to the members of the board, you were given the minutes from the June meeting earlier this month. You've had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections to be made to the June minutes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from June?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve the minutes from June. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all vote aye.
Aye.
Next, we have a court recorder here with us this morning that's taking a transcript record of our proceedings. The court recorder is provided as a service by Wilson County. If you would like a transcript of a particular case, that transcript would be at your cost, and you would be able to request that transcript by seeing the court recorder at the conclusion of our meeting. Just a reminder to everyone, if you would please, turn off your cell phones or silence your cell phones. If you do plan to make a statement in front of the board this morning, you need to be sworn in. So if you do plan to speak, if you would at this time, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in front of this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. And lastly, it's my understanding that the county tapes all of these meetings, and you can watch those on Wilson County TV at your leisure. They're also available on some of the cable services. So there's a record of this meeting if you want to go back and watch it at a later time. And I also want to remind you that what goes along with that is you are being recorded, so don't say anything you don't want to put on television. Okay. I believe that's all the housekeeping items, and the first case has been deferred. So our first case that we'll hear is case 4104. Stephen Dixon is requesting to waive the requirement of 12 months to rebuild a home that was destroyed by fire due to issues with the contractor. The existing home burned and was removed from the tax records January the 8th, 2022. Property is located at 355 Crosswinds Drive, Lot 29. Crosswinds is Group A, Parcel 12 on Wilson County Tax Map 29J. The property consists of 2.43 acres and is zoned R1 residential. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4104.
Mr. Chair, regarding 4104, building permits issued to replace damaged homes expire 12 months after issuance, in which structure of the residence is to be completed unless the applicant receives some sort of extension or relief from this board. None of which has been done for this structure in the 12-month period. There's no language in the Wilson County zoning ordinance that discusses staff authority to grant permit extensions. Therefore, staff cannot recommend approval. The board may consider such request.
Okay. Who's here to represent 4104, Stephen Dixon? Yes, sir. You want to come to the podium, please? Give us your name for the record, please.
Stephen Michael Dixon.
Anything you'd like to tell the board, sir?
Yes, I'd like to say that once the house had burned down and we lost everything, we were displaced for a while. My wife and I finally put a perimeter up at the lower portion of the property, at which time we are dwelling there in an RV with our animals, which everyone survived. No one got hurt seriously. But during this time, I had hired a company called First Call Claims, actually. They are a public adjuster that help you with your insurance company to get things going right, because I didn't know anything about how to do that. So these folks said they did a sweep of my policy, of my insurance policy, and that I had adequate funds. I was going to be able to take care of everything and get things built properly. And so they strung me along, basically. Took about $70,000 of my money, and then after it was all said and done, they basically told me that I did not have what you call replacement cost, which is a clause in the insurance to be able to rebuild. And because of the prices, the final cap of my policy was not enough for any contractor willing to build my home. So I stumbled around because I didn't know what to do. Then I found out just through talking to people that in Wilson County, you can be the contractor as the homeowner. You only have to pull a permit for, as far as, you can pull all the permits, but except for electrical. So these are things that I'm having to learn as I go. I'm also a full-time business owner, a disabled veteran, and my wife and I right now are struggling. Our money is in escrow with the mortgage company that we are financing the home through, and we are in the beginning stages, and I'm doing everything by myself. I removed all the debris by myself, removed all the block, got down to the footers. I just hired a what you call a structural engineer to come in to look at the footers. I need to get a letter from him, and then I'll go and pull my permit if you guys would allow. I'm here because we can't afford $5,000 plus everything else to rebuild the home. And I'd certainly appreciate you guys considering this. It's not something I did intentionally to stall things. It's something at first I just did not know how the process went, and it's a learning thing for me. That's all I've got to say.
So the house that you were living in, it burned down on January the 8th?
That's
of
correct.
22.
Yes, sir.
So it hasn't been that long?
No, sir, it hasn't been that long.
I got you. Okay. Anyone else have questions for the applicant? And if we were to grant this request, Mr. Lawless, if we were to waive this 12-month requirement, do we need to put a time frame?
You would need to add an additional time frame in order for him to pull the building permit, because right now it expires at 12 months. It'd be the same as an expired building permit. You can add additional time for him in order for him to pull the building permit. And then when he does that, he'll have the 2-year period.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, if no one else has questions for the applicant, then let me ask, does anyone else here wish to address 4104 Dixon? Okay. If there's no one else, then we'll close the public comment period on 4104. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And turn into the board in regard to 4104. Do I hear a motion or discussion?
Just to be clear, do we need to designate an amount of time
Yes, you would.
in months?
The motion would need to be to approve the request and establish a time frame.
For him to go in and pull the
And
permit?
the permit, a regular permit's good for 24 months.
I understand it, but he's gotta have time to go pull it.
He's got to
Right, you're
have,
extending the time frame for the grace period to not have to pay for the permit.
so it's sort of a two-part
I got you.
thing. All right? Discussion or a motion on 4104?
would, to the applicant, would 6 months be an adequate amount of time for you to get your building permit?
I would.
What are you requesting, I guess would be a better phrase.
If I could have 9 months, that would be much
He got built a
easier.
house.
I'm doing everything.
I'm
by
just
the
trying
book.
to pull the permit, and then once he pulls the permit, then he's got 2 years.
Is that,
That would be correct.
Well, then that's fine. I'm gonna pull the permit as soon as I get an okay from the building inspector. So
Okay.
as soon, if you guys will, allow me to waive that 5,000, I'll pull the permit this week.
Right, okay.
okay.
Go ahead.
In regard to 4104, I'll move that we grant the request and give the applicant 90 days to pull this permit. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion by the board. If there is no discussion, all in favor of the motion as stated, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Our next case is case 4105, K&A Land Surveying, requesting to be able to subdivide property under the previous requirements of 40,000 square foot lot requirements versus the new requirement of 80,000 square foot. The property is located at 81 Wright Road, Lot 1B, Anderson property, parcel 30.01 on Wilson County Tax Map 131. The total property consists of 2.9 acres, zoned A1 agricultural. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4105.
Mr. Chair, staff recs for case 4105. Applicants requesting to be able to subdivide property under previous requirements of 40,000 square feet lot versus the new requirement of 80,000 square feet. Property contains approximately 3 acres, and an approval of this request would allow the applicant to get an additional lot on the property. The submitted survey shows what is trying to be achieved on this property, which was included in your all's packet. Staff sees little adverse effect if this request is granted, as the property is rural in nature. Given the language in the zoning ordinance and being that this is a recently changed resolution, there is no precedence on this matter. Therefore, staff cannot recommend approval of the request. It is our understanding that this proposed subdivision was being drawn up by the surveyor for submittal prior to the time of the recent zoning density amendment passage that resulted in the need for this variance request given the envisioned subdivision of the property. It is also understanding that soils work had been done for the subdivision of the property prior to zoning density changes as well. While work had been done towards creating this subdivision of property, no submittal had been officially made to the county planning staff prior to the passage of the recent zoning density amendment. That concludes my comments for this case. There is also the following case that is very similar to this one. I just wanted to let you all know that there's multiple of these on the agenda today.
Are the other case, is it in the same area?
No, sir, it's in a completely different part of the county. It's off 109. This is down in the Statesville area.
Gotcha, okay. All right. In regard to 4105, who's here to represent that case? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Keith, K&A Land Surveying. I'm here representing the property owners. This case is, I guess, is a little unique, being that it is, it's a time-limited issue. It's one of those inadvertent things that came about from the new ordinance amendment. But we were in the process of working on this project for these people to create another lot to move in a family member, and they had basically spent money on soils and obviously surveying too. And we just didn't get the submittal in before the rule was voted on, or the new amendment was voted on. So what we're asking here today is to let them continue the process that they had started under the assumption of the 40,000 square foot rule, and not have them have the losses of the incurred costs that they started with. And we just ask that you would allow them to finish what they started.
Wow. Okay. And So it's my understanding this was not submitted before the
It was,
ordinance was changed?
the ordinance was effective May the 20th, and we did not have it turned in by May the 20th. But the reason we didn't have it turned in is we didn't have all our information together to turn in a, let me say this. We could have turned in a bogus plat and that didn't have all the pertinent information on it, but that's not a practice that we particularly use. Maybe that was the answer to it, but we didn't do that. So, until we could get a soils map ensuring that they had adequate soils to even create an additional lot, we didn't create the subdivision plat.
This is a new, as you know, because of this submittal, this is a new regulation that was, I think, May 20th was when it came
Yes.
into. But what do we do with the next month when somebody says, well, I've got a 100-lot subdivision that I was working on, I didn't get it in time?
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, if I can, I think this is a limited issue because,
It may be limited to you, but it won't be limited to the rest of the population, because they're gonna wanna say that they want the same treatment.
well, at this point, how could you say that you were working on something? You see what I'm saying? We were right in the middle of trying to submit a plat, so that's a very small window of time.
What, that was gonna be my question. What was the time period between when this amendment or whatever was proposed and voted on and when it actually took effect?
Well, the original, the discussions had been going on.
Was there a grace period in here somewhere or another?
There was no grace period given.
The
Yeah.
discussions had been going on about density for months.
I understand that.
The original proposal to the planning commission was in February, I believe.
So the county voted on it one night and the next day it went into effect.
Or
It started at planning and zoning in January of 2023. It came to planning commission in February. It went back to planning and zoning in March. We also had a work session in March. And then it went to county commission in May, which was May 16th, I want to believe, and the resolution took effect May 20th.
So it started through the public comment period,
So
so to
would-
speak, in January.
Would this gentleman would he have had any idea a week before it was passed that it was gonna be passed? Did he know, he says he was working on this project here, and he's a, licensed surveyor or expert in this field here. Would he have known a week ahead, 2 weeks ahead, I've got this amount of time, or did he just wake up one day and they said, hey, they passed this and you didn't make it?
Well, no.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
It was advertised publicly for every one of those meetings that I mentioned.
That it was
so-
gonna be approved or it was gonna be discussed?
That it was going to be discussed.
Because who knew whether it was gonna be voted up or down until they voted?
Correct. But all the meetings were advertised that the zoning change
Right.
could take effect, and we did our best efforts to make everyone aware that if there was
Okay.
nothing submitted before that date, it would be subject to the new regulations.
Right. They knew it was coming, but they didn't know.
And, yeah, and the cutoff for major subdivisions per se were, May 2nd, I believe, whatever the first Tuesday in May was, because our published agenda for planning commission was May 19th, and we didn't want the resolution to interfere with anything that was already on the published planning commission agenda. So that's why it got approved on the 16th, and it didn't take effect till the 20th, because that was the day after planning commission.
Mr.
I
Crockett, you have some?
I certainly understand. I have sympathy or empathy, whatever you want to call it, for your situation. But I think this is the first case, and somewhere there's going to be a line in the sand that has to be established, because there's probably going to be more of these coming up here. So when do you,
Well, I think they would have
Say
to have
yea or nay.
documentation that they were actually starting to, and is that
But-
possible, Christopher? Can we, if it's,
Yeah.
can we
There's-
say, can you prove that you were, or maybe
I-
this gentleman, can you?
That would be difficult. You would have to take their word that they've had documentation that they've hired a surveyor and hired a soil consultant. And I mean, we all know that those are if you hire one, you're probably 3 to 6 months out before you even be able to scene. So, I mean, there's gonna have to be some sort of threshold that you'd establish that not only that they've hired a surveyor, but the surveyor has actually started working on their project if you're gonna take that stance.
Howard, you have something?
I got a question. When did you start this project?
From a surveying standpoint,
Well, from when they probably only were first hired?
okay,
you?
the owner started the project, probably in January, February, because they had to hire a soil scientist to come in and check the,
Of this year?
yes. But that's a process, the soils process is a lengthy process. As some of you may know or may not, it can be 3, 4 months, 5 months maybe, before you've got to get on the schedule to get them out there. We can't actually submit something if we don't have that soils map.
I understand.
You can't make a buildable lot if
I
you
can
don't
turn
have a
something,
soils
I can
map.
turn something in, but it's not,
Right.
it's not right. I mean, I can't guarantee that it's even gonna be possible, until I get the pertinent information, and there was, that was just part of it, and we didn't get some formal notice that, we didn't get some formal notice that, you know, of the vote, you know, I didn't know this thing was gonna be voted on and then immediately effective.
Wait just a minute, what formal notice would you as an individual expect?
I didn't expect one. I'm just telling you I didn't get anything, so you asked about my knowledge of it. You know, you're expecting me to know all these things, but I mean, I didn't know when it was gonna take immediate effect. I didn't know it was gonna take immediate effect after they were discussing it and voting on it. I would have assumed we'd have some type of grace period to finish up what we've started, and then that's it. That's typical in a lot of these cases where they have amendments to ordinances.
I don't disagree, but the way this ordinance is written, that's not the case.
It's not the
That's,
case.
yeah, no, that's not how this one
I mean,
works.
I don't disagree with you at all. Looked like a period of time would have been fine, but that's not the way they wrote it. Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Before, going further, is anyone else who wishes to address 4105 K&A Land Surveying on behalf of Anderson? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Morning. I'm Blake Hall. I'm the District 9 Commissioner. It's in my district. And I voted for this ordinance, or this resolution. I was heavily in support of this. I even lobbied my fellow commissioners to support this. But I agree with the applicant. I believe we should approve this. So I just want to come up and stand
Please
up for
give me a
them.
basis.
My basis is that they started the process before we
Give me
voted
a
on it.
basis we can consider.
What do you mean? Like,
I mean, we just can't consider your opinion. I mean, the way we are here today, I appreciate the fact that you're here, and I appreciate the fact you're a commissioner, but there are certain things we can consider and certain things we really shouldn't. So based on what we can consider, give us a basis that we would approve this on. If you know.
as far as like where you would draw the line?
Well, you don't know me.
Correct.
I'm sort of a stickler about we took an oath to do something. And we should try to uphold that oath. And I'm trying to think, based on the ordinance and the resolution that y'all passed, what basis I would want to support this on. And there's criteria in the law,
Right.
things we can consider and what we can't. And then I think of the next guy,
Oh, yeah.
because next month you may not be here, but there may be someone else here, and they've got 20 lots, and
Right.
and same situation. What are we going to do for those people?
Right. I
And
totally understand
that's
your
really the rock
position.
and hard place I get into
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what happens to the other folks.
Absolutely. And my basis on it is the fact that, you know, from someone who supported this and wanted this change, I also was vocal about the fact that, I don't think that's been established in this hearing, but, the reason they're doing this is that they're cutting this off for a family member to move in to kind of help take care of the property owner. And so the way I look at it, and this is one of my opinions on it before we passed it, it didn't get put into the ordinance, was to make it, and this is something that Williamson County had done when they made their 5-acre density, is they have a exception for cutting things out for family members. And so that, for me, from a personal opinion standpoint, you know, the fact that they're doing this for a family member, they're not doing this to develop this, you know, just to make a subdivision and sell it off in lots and create a neighborhood. That, for me, is my basis on this, the fact that they already had established the process. They were doing their soils work. The soils work just took however long it took. I think it took 3 to 4 months. And then by the time they were able to contract with the surveyor, you know, we had passed our resolution. We did not give a grace period other than I think we gave a 4 or 5 day grace period, something like that. So, and then because the planning commission was meeting the following Friday, and that was the only reason we gave a grace period until that Saturday.
So if it hadn't been for the planning commission, y'all would have probably made it effective the next day.
Right, but I wouldn't have necessarily, you got to be able to count to 13 in the county commission, and there wouldn't have been 12 other people to, I don't believe, support a further grace period than that, so,
So they were.
But I
pretty
would have
anxious to
supported
get it.
one.
I mean, they thought it was important to get it passed.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Howard, you have a question?
I guess I got a statement. So because the county commission didn't want to give a grace period, now you come before this board as well as the surveyor and want us to give a grace period.
Right. Just me
That doesn't make
personally.
sense. I'm just gonna tell you.
Well, you got to have 12 other people to go along with you.
I understand the politics.
Right. So, I agreed with one, but I don't believe there was 12 other people that would have agreed with one. And so there was not a motion other than to give it until that Saturday after we voted on it. So,
What about, it's got nothing to do with this today, but what about going back to the county commission? You've got personal experience now of what's going on, and go back to the county commission and try to get a grace period put in it.
I think that's a question for Tom and probably Mike Jennings to,
You
know.
couldn't retroactive the
Yeah.
grace period, you'd have to amend the ordinance in some form or
Yeah,
fashion.
they had to start through the process again. It may not be that pleasant.
It would not be pleasant.
That's the reason this board is here, so they don't have to do what you just
Correct.
suggested, and then it comes up here, and then we have to do something with it.
Jared?
Well, why were you lobbying so hard for that to be passed? And now you go the other way.
Okay. So I hate to get into the politics of all this, and it may not be a political thing, but during the campaign, the one thing I heard while I was campaigning was that we've got to do something about all the growth that's going on in Wilson County. And so I started asking questions. And I'm also a real estate agent. And so I started asking around, and the biggest thing I heard that you can do from a county commission standpoint is that you can increase the lot requirement to decrease your density. And, you know, that was something that when I asked people in my district about, I maybe had, out of everybody I talked to, I might have had 2 people that had any reservations with it, increasing the lot size requirement. And so, you know, I did my research. I asked my questions. And that's why I supported it. But this situation to me is so unique in this particular case. The fact that they were in the middle of doing it based on the old ordinance, and then we passed the one that we have now right in the middle of it. I think it was about a week later. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was about a week later they got their soil results back, and then they went to go hire their surveyor, and then they found out, you know, we have a new lot requirement. So,
I've got a question for staff, and this may not really apply, actually doesn't apply here, but I'm thinking that I've heard somewhere during our training that when someone goes in, a developer buys something, and when they get invested in it in a certain amount, then the county or whoever can't change the zoning or something. Does that, I mean, I know that's not this case, but would there be any similarities?
That,
There's a name for that, I don't know what it's called, but
is
vested
grandfather.
interest or something.
It'd be-
Once the developer gets so far,
Significant interest.
You'd be,
significant, okay, thank you.
yeah, that or you'd be grandfathered into the old regulations.
And I'm not saying this is that scenario, but is it similar?
That takes effect for everything that was approved at that particular planning commission the Friday before this resolution went in, and anything in the past. Major subdivision plats or even minors per se. Minors are a little different because they only have a 2-year, they have a 2-year period after they get approved by the planning commission to get finalized and recorded to become a legal lot of record. Major subdivisions that have multiple phases, once they're approved, state law gives them 15 years to complete that development under the regulations they were approved under. So we're operating on stuff, and planning commission is still seeing stuff that has vesting rights back from 2016 and 2017, and those projects have rights out to 2030.
But this other case we've got coming up later is the same applicant, but it's a different part of the county.
Different owner, different part of the
Different
county.
altogether.
Yes, sir.
He wants the same treatment.
Yes, in this instance.
I don't, I say we're not prepared today, I don't mean that literally, but we're prepared by there's a law and an ordinance. But if we say yes today to this, in 30 minutes or 3 months, when do you say, no, it's been too long? That's my problem with voting on this today. I think needs to be more thought put into it, because there's gonna be a day of reckoning that you've gotta say no. When does that start? Today?
Well, I think
Next month?
it either goes on forever, or somebody's gonna take us to court and say, look at all these other ones you did. Because we've
Yes.
got two.
We're having to
today.
do a job that the county commission did not prepare their ordinance correctly, or anticipate these issues coming up, and surely
Or maybe they did, maybe this is the way they wanted it.
could be. It's guessing, I guess, but I don't think.
Problem is, when in May, when they were voting on this, they didn't have constituents staring at them that had a lot they
Yeah.
wanted to, or maybe they did, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I just
But,
think it's very
It's a tough
important.
thing. I can tell you from having been a commissioner for several years, it's a tough thing when some individual comes to you and wants help and, you know.
And that's where
it's
I'm
not
being
like
pulled,
you.
that's where I'm being pulled today, because most people know me, I'll give the shirt off my back. But once we say yes, when do you say no?
Well, my deal would be that whenever this ordinance was passed in May, had they already done their soils work? Had they spent 3 months on a project before then? If they hadn't, well then, you missed it. But I don't know how easy that is to document and to approve. Everybody may say, oh yeah, we started last year, I don't know that. I don't know how, I don't know if he's got paperwork proving where they actually, had a soils guy on site. So I don't know. I do feel like there should have been a grace period, like Mr. Chairman said. There wasn't a grace period, so
And that's the hand we've been dealt.
that's the hand we've been dealt. I don't know.
We're spending quite a bit of time on this, but
Yeah.
it's worth, this is a big deal to us, because I think
Right.
it can.
I understand your position, and
We're gonna set a
and
precedent
I'll
one way or
speak
the
to
other.
I'll speak to where you draw your line. Your line is where people in the middle of, had they spent money months before we passed the resolution, and I don't really think there's going to be that many people that you are going to have that can say that. And especially in a scenario like what we're dealing with here, this is simply, you're cutting one little lot off of a larger tract so that somebody can take care of their
And that was,
elderly family members.
does that have any? And that's a very valid point, and I agree with that. So I guess my discussion is the fact that this isn't a huge development; it's just for one little. Does that? Do you got to do for the guy with 100 tracks what you do with the guy with 1 track?
Commissioner Hall makes 2 or 3 good points.
Very, very
From a common sense perspective, they're very good points. From a technical perspective of
I'm
the
an attorney
ordinance.
here.
Well, I don't know what else he's gonna
I
say.
saw him walking out while I was
Yeah,
walking
don't
out. I don't
blame
know
him.
where he was
He
going.
must have read the agenda. But from a technical perspective, the common sense comments fail. Because what do you do with the guy that, you know, you said, well, it's just one lot, and that's true, this is just one.
One lot for
additional-
family
One
members.
additional lot for a
I mean-
family.
I mean-
Okay, does the number of lots, should that make any difference? I'm gonna say it should not.
I don't know.
Does it, is it because it's a family member make any difference? I'm gonna say it should not. Now, we all have sympathy for folks
Right.
that need things done, but from the zoning ordinance perspective, from the legal perspective, I would just have to guess that the number of lots or the relationship of folks one to another, you know, can't be considered. So what do you do with the guy that's next week, next month, 6 months from now? Let's say, for example, I'm building a new building, and y'all, recently, I think, did something with some of the fees, commercial fees, commercial impact, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I've paid all my fees. Now I want to do an addition. I don't have to pay. I don't have to pay the new rate because I was already in progress, because that's not what it says. It says, you know, here are the new rates. And I think they're based on footage, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's we just changed, all we changed was, and we may have, I think we ended up doubling the
Doubled
square
the
footage
commercial.
percentages, and then we actually made the minimum, we changed that from $1,000 to $5,000 to match the residential adequate facilities tax.
So I just keep having these thoughts of the ripple.
Right.
And believe it or not, people are pretty smart. They can find the cracks.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody up here that's been here over 6 months can tell you the cracks are looked for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me go a little further. Is there anyone else that wishes to address 4105 K&A Land Surveying, Anderson? Yes, sir. Following.
My name is Joseph Rucker. I'm the husband of, well, the property owner, Miss Anderson, is sitting there. But her granddaughter is the one that's going to be inheriting this property if you guys approve the. And I paid the soil sample. The guy that we hired to do the soil sample, we hired in January. He could not come out until the end of April, so it was April the 27th, just to give you an exact date, where I wrote the check to him for the soil sample. I just wanted to get that out there. We were told that you can't pull permits until you get the soil sample done, and then the surveyor comes out. So we didn't have any idea that this ordinance was even being discussed. I mean, I'm green to all this kind of stuff anyway. We're just trying to help my grandmother-in-law by moving onto the property. So that's kind of where we're at. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
got
sir.
a question for you,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So when did you receive the soil sample results?
We knew within a couple of days whether it was going to be good or bad, I think.
And what day was that about?
Well, we got it done on the 27th, so it was within the next week or so.
27th of what? was it?
April.
April. Okay, so you were right in there where this resolution.
And at that time, honestly, I had no idea that there was, I mean, somebody the surveyor had called me after the vote on the ordinance and told me about it, and that's how we found out.
That is a valid concern. I mean, we might expect a professional like the surveyor to know about what all these mean. But I mean, this gentleman that's the landowner, he's supposed to know what all's going on with the planning commission, the county court and all that. That is his job to know all that. 'Cause I didn't really know all that was going on. I mean, you know, so.
That I can't answer.
Well, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. We expect that out of the surveyor and people that are doing it for a living. But, you know, when you're just a
I agree.
landowner.
I would expect the engineers and the surveyors to know this is what's being
Right.
discussed.
More so than just a common person who, you know, doesn't keep up with all of it, maybe.
And certainly the efficiencies of public notice have diluted to some degree in the last several years. You know, used to, everybody read the paper.
Right.
And I don't know
Not nobody even gets a paper.
that.
Very few get a
Very
paper.
few get a paper. Okay. Anyone else wish to address 4105 K&A Land Surveying, Anderson.
Chairman, can I address a couple things?
If you'll do it quickly and if it's new,
Well, it just added to some of the discussion you've had since I've been.
go ahead.
So,
Briefly, please.
to the time frame issue real quick on the soils, you were bringing that up, and I just want to clarify. Getting the soil scientist out at the end of April and getting an affirmative answer that the soils are good is not the end of the process. So just so you know, he has to produce a soils map for us to incorporate into the plat. So that takes even more time. We didn't actually get the soils map till well on into May.
Do you remember when you first were made aware that the ordinance may change?
I cannot honestly answer that exact date,
What month?
May.
May. Okay. So,
But, Mr. Chairman, just because I got knowledge in a few days before, I couldn't get it in.
I understand. I just was,
And I don't believe that they should be punished for that after they have spent
I don't
time
think
and
anyone
effort.
wants to punish anybody.
No, I'm not saying you're
But the
punished, so I'm
law
just
has
saying
changed,
it's gonna
and we
feel
have
that
to-
way.
We have to deal with it. You made this request, we have to make a decision.
And I understand where you're going with the precedent issue, but I honestly believe that I can show dates of when we started the project and we're involved in the project. I don't think that can happen on past this point, because just because you bought a piece of land, you haven't started the project. Just because you've made some plans doesn't mean you started the project. But once you've engaged in contract work and you have got a plan in motion, then you have started your project. And I think this does not go forward, as you are all probably concerned about. I don't think this goes forward past this meeting, in honesty. I thought about this quite a bit. I didn't just come up here with no thought. I have thought about it.
I would differ with you, but I can see a few commissioners being, and we're not here to please the commissioners, I understand, but I can see some commissioners being very upset that they passed a resolution that said a certain thing, and the first time it's challenged, we approve that challenge. I can also see several developers saying, wait a minute, you said this was going to be the law of the land going forward, and now you're granting relief from it. There's no criteria to grant relief from it. There's no grace period. There's no wording that says if you can show evidence that you were working on the project prior to this particular date, then, you can have some relief. There's none of that language in there. And it would have been great in hindsight.
Yeah.
But
I agree with that. There's not, and so this board is the only choice we have.
And to shoot from the hip and try to make some type of policy in the middle of a zoning board meeting is not, in my mind, a good thing to do. That's the type of thing that might require some thought and discussion before we establish some type of potential policy that we might go by.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else wish to speak to 4105? Last call. Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and I think it might be appropriate to defer 4105 further action till the end of the meeting, and let's see if Mr. Jennings is back from his court to see if we can't get his comments as well. So I'm going to make a motion to defer 4105 to the end of the meeting. Do I have a second?
Yes, and could we amend that possibly to add the other case that's gonna be?
I think we probably need to go ahead and have the hearing and then defer.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
So, y'all got a second? Any discussion? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition, no. And we'll revisit 4105 before we leave today. Okay. All right. Our next case is 4106 K&A Land Surveying on behalf of Gray, requesting to be able to subdivide property under the previous requirements of 40,000 square foot lot size versus the new requirement of 80,000 square foot. The property is located at 9290 Highway 109, Parcel 5, Wilson County Tax Map 13. The amount of property wanting to be divided is 6.36 acres and is zoned A1 agricultural. We get staff recommendations now on 4106.
Mr. Chair, given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval of the request. It is our understanding that this proposed subdivision was being drawn up by the surveyor for submittal prior to the time of the recent zoning density amendment passage that resulted in the need for this variance request given the envisioned subdivision of the property. It is also our understanding that soils work had been done for the subdivision of the property prior to zoning density changes as well. While work had been done towards creating this subdivision of property, no submittal had been officially made to the county planning staff prior to the passage of the recent zoning density amendment. In addition, there is a survey in your packet for this particular lot at 6.36 acres. The proposed survey is for 6 additional lots under the old regulation. The new regulation would only allow 3.
Okay, who's here to represent 4106, K&A Land Survey?
Yes, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, this is similar in some regards, and I guess different in others, but the general crux of the case is the same. There was actually substantially more money spent in this case because of the size of it. We had done, and on this particular property, we had done a plan for 8 lots. We already got 2 lots approved. And we did it that way because the other lots that we are asking a variance on, there was some questions as whether how he was working on a potential commercial lot on the corner. In the meantime, that's why we did not submit that along with the other 2 lots. But we did not submit that because of this issue. That was before we knew of the date of the vote for the amendment, as we've been through already. So I'm going to be real quick. We're just asking that it's the same request, that we could finish the plat that we had already started. And I'm pretty sure where this discussion is going, so I'll sit down. Thank you.
I don't know that it's relevant to what we can consider, but what's the difference in the number of lots between the old criteria?
3 and 6.
3 and 6.
3 and 6. So you could have had 6, but if
Yes,
we
sir.
hold him to the 80, it's going to be 3.
It's from a monetary standpoint, it's very large.
Can't consider monetary.
I'm just telling you, that's the reason it matters. Not to you, but to the owner, it matters a lot.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does anybody have questions of the applicant? I forgot. And if not, does anyone else wish to address 4106 K&A Land Surveying Gray? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Mike Roundsville, and my wife and I reside at 204 Crichton Lane. So the property is right across the street from where our residence is. I'm here today to express my concerns regarding the property being allowed to go to the 40,000 square feet instead of the required 80. The question that I have to the commission is the law was put into place for the 80,000 square feet to, I would believe, to slow the growth and to help alleviate the density of the population in the area. That area also brings more traffic. We are living on a small 2-lane street. We have a 12,000 plus square foot Boy Scout camp at the end that we already experience numerous days and weekends of traffic that is just unbelievable. They're in and out. While we do enjoy the landscape and the wildlife that provides to us, it is a total burden trying to get in and out. There's times where you can't even go out on the weekend to enjoy dinner. In addition to that, since 109 has been widened, we have seen a tremendous amount of traffic, which in itself is a burden. Trying to leave to go to work in the morning, if you're turning left going to Gallatin, it's next to impossible. There is not a turn lane that is provided to that, so the traffic backs up even more for the people that are trying to turn right. When we first bought our house there, we bought the property because we felt that we really enjoyed the size of the lots that are in that community. The charm, the privacy, everything that goes along with that. And we feel like if this is granted, we're going to lose that because it's going to go from a lot, I have almost 2 acres myself. We're going to go to really small lots, increase the amount of people in that property area, and make the burden even greater for us. We feel like it's going to hurt our property values because now instead of having the wide spread lots, we're going to see the small condensed lots that you see in most neighborhoods. We feel like that by granting that, it would make an even more dangerous situation because of the traffic for the children that, we don't have a lot of children now, but if you go to the new homes, we feel like that's a possibility. So my question to the commission is, what was the intent of the law in passing it to the 80,000? And how is this going to benefit any other person other than the current property owners that want the lots to be subdivided? And I understand they want to maximize their sale from their profits. But as the commissioner has says, economics is not part of this consideration. So we would ask that you consider everything from the traffic to the noise, to taking away the large lots and the charm of our neighborhood. And we'd like you to consider not doing this proposal. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else wish to address 4106 K&A Land Surveying Gray?
Janice Roundsville.
Can you say that again, please?
Janice Roundsville. I live across the street from the property. My husband said it very well that we are against it. We want the lots to remain 40,000 square, from 40 to 80, the 2 acre lot size. Just because the Boy Scout camp has a lot of traffic, yes. If you add more homes into that area, it's also going to endanger those boys and girls now. Those families coming in and out of there, it's a 2-lane road. And that also goes down Woods Ferry, which is not 2 lanes, it's 1.5 lanes. And Bloodworth is the other side of it, which is 1 lane. If someone's coming, you have to find some place to pull over. So it's just too much, it's too much. And our biggest concern is if it's right now zoned A1 agricultural. I'm not sure how a subdivision fits into agricultural land. And is that going to turn into, the next thing is going to be commercial land? And then are we going to see an apartment building or a gas station being built right there? So our concerns are huge for this piece of property. And I commend them for voting the larger lot size to reduce that, so that we're safer. Because the growth, y'all drive 109, it's a highway, it's crazy out there. And we know it's gonna explode. But their rulings that they've done is gonna reduce that and hopefully mitigate too much out there. That's all, if that made any sense. I don't speak well in front of people.
Let me ask you one question. What was your address?
204 Creighton Lane.
Okay.
Is that all you need?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
I'm a little slow right
Take your time.
Morning. My name's Bill Day, and I live at 254 Crichton Lane, which is right across the street from the lot that you're talking about. And my biggest concern is 8 small plots of land on 6 acres. That means that the houses that's going to go there are going to be small. And all of our houses that I live on, and my neighbors' houses, are anywhere from 1.5 acres to 2 acres, and the houses are 2,000 plus square feet. And I would ask the commission that if they can do it, you know, if I think it's going to be sold, and I understand why the Graves are selling it, but I'd ask that they put a limit on the lot size of at least 2 acres, and the houses at least 2,000 square feet. I don't know if the county can do that, but
House size.
But anyway,
As we sit here, the lot size is 80,000 feet, which is just shy of 2 acres.
well,
And
just
what they're requesting is for us to let them go smaller.
yeah, and we'd rather
And I
see them
understand
bigger
you
than.
say you're not keen on that.
No, and because, I mean, it's, these small houses and small lots, I feel like it's not gonna do anything but drag our prices down on our houses, the worth of our houses. And with Boxwell being Boxwell is half a mile down the road on the same road. And it's like a racetrack on weekends. You can't hardly get out on our road because of all the traffic. And then we got semis coming up and down delivering food and everything. It's just, it's really a dangerous situation sometimes on Crichton Lane. But that's all I got. I ask that, you know, they don't make them 6 or 8 lots in 6 acres. I think it's awful small.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'll close the public hearing as it relates to, excuse me. If anyone else wants to speak, if you would please come on and make your way up here. Let's get through this. Yes, ma'am.
Hey there, my name is Myrna Davis, and I live at 1601 Woods Ferry Road, so I'm right off of Creighton. I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, East Nashville. Loved it. Back in the 70s, it was a great place to be. If any of you have been to Nashville, you see all the tall and skinnies now. It's terrible. I don't want where I live now and raise my kids to become what East Nashville has become with all their little bitty lots and all their tall houses. Instead of going this way, they're going that way. Boxwell is a concern, the reservation back there, because the traffic on the weekends, it's a nightmare. If there's a wreck on the highway, people cut through Creighton and Woods Ferry to get on the other side of Gallatin, which the school bus is late at that time. Then you can't get out to go to work at that time. You can't get off Creighton to go left into Gallatin. There's a lot of stuff back there. And I just feel like, you know, you passed this 80,000 square feet for a reason. Why now are we here saying, well, we passed it, but we didn't mean it for these few people that don't want it. So, you know, how do you police that?
Good point. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Most everybody that's spoken.
If you got something new, you need to come up here and let us know.
Okay.
Otherwise, we need to move on, if we can. We don't want to shut anybody off, but, yeah, it has to be a limit.
Most everyone that's spoken up here has lived there for over 10 years. I've lived there for over 20. And, you know, that's really our concern. We moved there because Crichton Lane and the Legardo area is a great place to live. And we'd like for it to stay that way. But with all these new houses and things that are possibly being built, I feel like it's really gonna make the neighborhood not as great as it was. So, but anyway, that's all I gotta say. I'll get out of here.
All right. Anyone else? Last call. All right. Public hearing is closed. Turning to the board in regard to 4106, is there any discussion we need to have before a motion? Well, I tell you what, I'll make a motion that we defer 4106 to the end of our agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Now, any discussion before we vote? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no, and we'll revisit, yeah, it's gonna be a while. We'll revisit 4106, and before we go any further, Karen, do you have Mike's cell number? Or does anyone have, I wanna get him a text, tell him he does need to come on back over here when he gets done. Can you do that without breaking some kind of rule?
office, but I don't know if I have it on.
Teresa's got it. I'm gonna give her a second to do that. Yeah, we deferred two cases to the end that we need him present for.
We need help.
Now you got neighbors that they don't want you. Now where you going, Barry?
I just want to help the families. I just help the family with it. I want to help the family. I want to. That ring and stuff.
No, it doesn't. It does not. You good? All right, we can proceed. Our next case is case 4107. Thomas Holland is requesting to build a barn to store camper in to live in. Applicant is also requesting a variance from the requirement of 2,000 square foot for an accessory structure without a principal structure. The variance will allow the proposed barn to be 3,200 square feet. Property is located at 2554 Quarry Road, Lot 1, Holland property, parcel 69.01 on tax map 71. The property consists of 13.28 acres and is zoned R1 residential. We get staff recommendations now on 4107.
Mr. Chair, applicant is requesting to build a barn to store camper to live in. Applicant is also requesting a variance from the requirement of 2,000 square feet for an accessory structure without a principal structure on the property. Staff will emphasize that the camper on the property must be placed on a permanent fixed foundation to be permitted as a residence. If so, the camper will be acting as the primary residence on the property, and the size variance for the barn would not be needed or required. Staff will also note that the barn will be viewed as part of the residence if the camper is installed on a permanent foundation within it, and the applicant will be required to pay adequate facilities tax and residential building permit fees for the proposed square footage of the barn. In that instance, the camper would have to be disabled from being a camper, and they would have to prove that it is put on a permanent foundation and stacked on a masonry crawl space per se for the camper. It would not be able to be hooked up and pulled off the property at that point anymore.
Okay. Who's here to represent 4107, Thomas Holland? Yes, sir. Name, please.
My name is Thomas Holland. I own the land there. Part of that is true, but what we want to do is we got a camper parked there with a shed that we got all our stuff stored into, and we want to build this garage barn type deal to put all our stuff into. And then after we get that built, because right now the camper and the shed and everything is part where we're going to build our house at. So once we get the barn built, we're going to move all that stuff and start building a house, basically.
But you gonna put the camper in the barn?
Well, we'll store it there when we're living in the house.
Right,
Just a
but
place
I mean,
to-
for this request, it says.
It won't be like, it'd be over there at the shed, at the barn, whatever, but we're not gonna be actually living inside. No.
Because
I think they misunderstood me
Let's-
when
So
I
you're
was.
gonna live in the camper while you're building the new house?
Yes, sir.
You are gonna live in the camper?
Yes, sir.
So let's unwind this a little bit, because I think we're tangled up. All right. If you have a camper out there right now and you're living in it,
Yes, sir.
it needs, and there's no building permit in play, you're just living in the camper.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It needs to have a permanent foundation.
It'd have to be on a permanent
You need
foundation.
to have a permit, and you need an adequate facilities payment, because that's your
Correct.
house, as far as the county's concerned.
And that building permit that you mentioned, that can't be a building permit for an accessory structure. That would have to be a building permit for a residence in order to live on a
Right, 'cause that's
camper.
that camper's your house.
Yes.
okay? Now, if you're gonna build a home, then you can live in the camper while you're building the house. We allow that, don't we?
That is correct.
Okay, so if you had a permit for a house and you were properly permitted, the camper's okay as it is just while you're building the house. You get 2 years to do that.
Okay.
All right. And once the house is in place, then the size of the accessory structure is not limited.
Correct.
You can have whatever you want, okay? So all that being said, what are you requesting?
Well, right now, where we want to build a house, we have the camper sitting there, along with the shed that we got all of our stuff stored into, and a washer and a dryer to wash clothes and stuff like that. So we don't want to build the barn to store our stuff, to get rid of all the stuff that's sitting there where we're going to build a house.
So your request then is to have to exceed the size of the accessory structure.
It would be, there would be two facets to that. They would want to remain to be able to live in the camper without a zoning violation or a building permit pulled for a primary residence, and then a 1,200 square foot variance on an accessory structure without a primary residence would be the whole intent of that request.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Staff did write it up as a variance in regards to the size of the accessory, but when do you plan on building the house? I think,
We'll have the house done by probably middle of next year, or
Okay.
first of next year or something.
because if you apply for your building permit for the house and you have an active building permit for a house, then you're allowed to live in that camper.
Okay. So can we apply for both of them at the same time?
You
or-
could, well, we would probably do two separate permits just because we have inspections, and to be able to keep the inspections separate, we would do two permits, a permit for a house and then a permit for your accessory structure.
Okay.
If you apply for your permit for your house, then you can apply for the permit for the accessory structure and you won't need a variance on the size.
When do you plan to apply for your home building permit?
Today, if we can.
Well, I don't know if you've got all the.
I don't have no plans or anything, so I have to get all that done.
If we were to grant a 90-day variance on the situation, the current situation,
Yeah, because your RV is on the property now,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Okay.
then you think 90 days would be adequate for you to get your building permit?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
one question I do have in regards to the 90 days is, have you applied for a septic permit?
The septic's already there.
Okay, because sometimes the septic may take longer than the 90 days.
My grandfather had a trailer sitting there
Okay,
that was not livable, and it had holes in the walls, floors, and black mold everywhere.
Well, I was just going, by the
And
fact
so
you
we
said you
tore
could
it
apply
down.
today, I'm thinking there's always going to be little things you have to
Right.
deal with. But if you think you can get this together and get your permit within 90 days, then the necessity for these variances goes away.
Okay.
And, then you can just move forward with your home construction.
Okay.
That would be one possible, but if, I don't know if 90 days is adequate. If it gets to be more than that, then we get into a problem with, just how long do we let things go on?
Right.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Right now, the camper would be in violation, code violations.
So,
From what
in order
I
for you-
understand.
This gentleman, to get out of this, he needs to get your building permit. And then you don't have to worry about this request, correct? Okay.
And in reality, if they were to pursue it, by the time they issue all of the required notices, you're gonna eat up now. It takes 30 days and 60 days, so there's your 90 right there. I'm just
I would think
spitballing.
that would be a solution for 90 days.
Yeah. Now, does the board have any questions anybody else have questions for the applicant? Okay. If not, does anyone else here wish to address the board in regard to 4107 Thomas Holland? Okay. If not, then in regard to 4107 Thomas Holland, I'll close the public comment period, turn into the board for a motion or discussion.
I'll make a motion for the 90-day, what do you call it, grace period or whatever, to get the
Have a
building
motion
permit.
to grant Mr. Holland a 90-day grace period in order to get his building permit. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second by Mr. Blades. Discussion by the board. If there is no discussion, all in favor of the motion as stated, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you, sir. All right. Our next case is case 4108. Yes. Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'm going to attempt to get through most of this other agenda, and then we'll probably take a recess and then come back and do the two lot size requirements. But let's see if we can get through this. 4108, Jerry Britton is requesting to build a house on property that already has two existing houses. Applicant is also needing a variance of 50 feet from the road frontage requirement. The property is located at 457B Bates Road, parcel 23 on Wilson County Tax Map 13. The property consists of 4.80 acres and is on A1 agricultural. Good staff recommendations on 4108.
Mr. Chair, at the end of this, I'm probably going to need a little clarification from the applicant because I've got conflicting research on my end, but applicant is requesting to build a house on the property that already has two existing homes on the property per our field review assessment. My research with the tax assessor, there's a frame house on the property that was built in 1985, and there was a mobile home on the property. The origin of that, I'm not sure, but it was removed from the tax card in 2016, and the current tax card has one home on the property, which is the frame house that was built in 1985. There are two homes on the property that I can testify that were there on the field review. Applicant has also needed a variance of 50 feet from the road frontage requirement due to it being a landlocked tract. The tract of land does not have road frontage, meaning this property is unable to be subdivided in a manner that meets requirements for separate tracts of land, which will eliminate the need for a variance for a second or third primary structure in this instance. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval due to the restrictions of only one home per tract of land. This is also not an older lot of record per county records.
Okay, who's here to represent 4108 Britton? Yes, sir. You may add your name and address, please.
My name's Jerry Britton, 1405 Logan Fall Road, Smyrna, Tennessee.
And, let's see, are you the owner or the?
No, I'm the son.
The son?
My father is the owner.
I got you. Okay. All right. What'd you like to tell the board, sir?
Well, my father gave me he was giving me a piece of property to build me a home on, so I would be with him. And I came to talk to the people, and they said he already had two houses on it.
Yeah, state law says you get one house per tract. You've already got two.
But I know he just has one. It's his.
Chris, do you go down there?
There looked like there were two livable residences on the property. The tax card has the one that was a mobile home that was removed from record in 2016. But it does still appear on my field review that there were two livable structures. I can't There was nobody home at either one of them on my field review, so I can't justify if somebody was living in the other one, but there does appear to be 2 livable structures on the property. I only have tax records for the frame house that was built in 1985, and then they have a removed mobile home in 2016.
So we don't know about the, well, let me ask you, sir, you're the applicant. Are there 2 families on that parcel now, or 2 houses that are being used?
Yes, I guess. There's the 2. Yes.
Okay. The board have any questions for that?
So, again, I guess my question is, there's zoning violations there, or are those allowed?
We didn't know about any of this until they came in wanting another house.
Technically, yes, it's a violation. On the other hand, it's been there for evidently quite a few years, and in the past, we've not been aggressive toward residences that have been there a long, long period of time. Maybe not predating the ordinance, but still a long, long time.
I might be wrong, but I think the issue before us today is whether or not we allow a 3rd house.
That is
Am I correct? And that's only.
That is correct. That's the request.
That's the request that's before us today.
Okay, well, let's get, just to clarify, normally there's only 1 house allowed per parcel. And normally, if you want to put additional homes on that parcel, you get a soil scientist and a surveyor and have to make some subdivisions of the property, you know. And if the soil's there, that may work, and if the soils aren't there, then it could get to be difficult. But that would be normally the way.
They don't have 50-foot road frontage, I don't think.
Oh, was that? Okay.
I mean, I'm not for sure, but I think that's part of the deal here.
And that's a state law, is that each parcel has to have 50 foot of frontage on a public road.
This board may not have the ability to grant a 3rd house
Well,
without going against state law.
well, we do, I think, but we don't normally.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Looking at the map up here, so I'm looking at that lot that you currently have the 2 houses on. That lot is actually landlocked. You have a right-of-way, is that a right-of-way on the right-hand side down off of Bates Road? You have a driveway that's a right-of-way through somebody else's property?
Not as I know. They know more about it.
Oh, it's the same property? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Does anyone else you wish to speak to 4108 Britton? Yes, ma'am.
Sharnitha Britton, his wife, that's my father-in-law's that lives there. Little clarification is, there's 2 dwellings on the property. So when we came up here to get some information on how to build or what we needed, that's when we found out that that structure that's on his property should be on that property that's squared out.
That little blue square?
That little bitty square. So the structure that y'all are saying that belongs to him, it really should be there, but it never got there.
I mean, is it,
So-
so is the map wrong, or nobody just ever moved it?
Nobody ever moved there. So it shows that my father-in-law has 2 structures on his lot, which actually the approval that we're trying to get would actually be 2 structures on that one lot if we were able to get approved to move there.
So are y'all wanting to replace one of those structures? Or, because the request is to have an additional one, but is it actually a request to replace one of those structures or to build an entirely new one?
Well, we were actually gonna build a new one because we didn't actually know there was two on that one to begin with. Because when he gave it to my husband, or told him he could move there, we had no clue, because we was moving on the other side, not on the side where there was a house that is tore down now. But the other dwelling never moved on their property where they should have been. So that's where we are now. We're kind of like in limbo.
Okay.
But that one driveway goes all the way up in the back, which is still everybody's property, everybody's kin. And it's kind of been like that for 50-plus years.
This property was very confusing. It,
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the deed.
yeah, it was very confusing. I don't know
Yeah, we
how,
don't get simple stuff.
I don't know how the little square got divided out. I didn't really research that, considering they were wanting, because you're wanting to, like, if you see the structure that looks like it's got a red roof on it. I don't know
Right.
if it's red or not, but it looks like it's got a red roof. From what I understood from you, you're wanting to build on the right side.
Correct. That red structure is actually my father-in-law's house.
Okay.
That's, we're
What's
gonna
the
go
other
straight.
house?
The other house is tore down, and then there's another structure house there too that should have been moved over into that little square green
You know,
box.
I don't know that there's anything we can do with this, but
It was very confusing, so.
it might be, just make sure we look in give it every opportunity. It might be a good thing to defer this until y'all request to get back on our agenda at some future time, so that you can meet with staff and see if there's anything that might, because if you're replacing a house that's been there 50 years, it's a little bit different than I wanting a third house, there's already two there and there's not supposed to be one. I don't know what we would do with that. We might approve, we might not.
Okay.
But it might be appropriate to, if y'all want to, if the applicant wants to defer and let you do some more research about, what's where, what, which one.
I think there's too much gray area here. And
Yeah,
plus,
there's a little bit of.
Well, and it sounds like you may be wanting to move one of these houses over into that little square, which.
That won't move.
Oh,
But let
that
me
doesn't-
ask.
okay.
Yeah, that won't happen.
That won't happen.
That, no.
Okay, I
No.
misunderstood.
It would be nice, but, well, what if we put a proposal to move where the square is? Will they grant that?
We can only consider what's told to us here. From,
Okay.
Is it a
So,
different lot?
Mm-hmm, yes.
My thing was, if you could go and meet with the staff and come up with, get all the information, sort of clear up some gray areas, and then come back, then, possibly there might be some room there for approval. Not saying there is, but at least we'd have all the information. Right now, we've got some gray areas.
and I think you're going to have to get your soils area defined if you can actually have a septic system that will handle additional homes. I think that's going to have to be cleared up.
Now, when you said staff, who is staff?
That's the people that work at the courthouse in the planning office and
Okay.
building permit office and that type of thing.
When
Okay.
you applied to come here?
Oh, gotcha.
You know,
Okay.
Again, I think there's so much gray area here, I don't know that we would be comfortable, even considering it, because we don't want to say no and then come to find out there's possibility things could be worked out.
Okay.
And at the same time, we don't want to say yes, and then, you've got septic tank issues or some other thing that would be a problem.
Okay. So basically, if the second dwelling wasn't on that parcel or tract, we would be okay, we wouldn't be here
Let me
today, right?
Let me just answer that by saying, I would suggest you talk to them
Okay,
and
All
get
right.
all the information together.
okay,
As much as you possibly can. And
Gotcha.
if we were to make a motion to defer, we would make it to defer until you request to get back on the agenda, so you wouldn't have to pay the fee again.
okay,
And then, you make that request, and then we'll hear it at that point.
cool. Okay, great. Thank you.
Now, does anyone else here wish to address 4108 Britton? If not, I'll close the,
Maybe one more.
yes, sir.
My
name is Robert Lee Britton, and I'm one of the heirs to the property here. Years ago, my grandfather purchased land, and he had 9 boys and 2 girls. All of this property is Britton property. And he gave each one of his boys an acre to an acre and a half to build houses. And the land that's in question is the part that they was farming on. So, and beside, on this side of my uncle, which my cousin is talking about, it was a house there, which was my grandfather's mother, which was an older house, and they had tore it down. So, my thing is, I'm all for, my grandfather aired it down from his kids to us and our kids, and that's as far as it go. I'm all for my cousin wanting to build on our land. It's just the logistics part is playing a part in this.
Yeah.
But all that is Britton land. I live at 305. I own that, which was my dad is Jim Britton.
See, we run into this from time to time. Because you have grandmama, granddaddy, or great-granddaddy, whoever over here. And then you have the law over here.
Yes,
or
sir.
the regulations.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times they don't mesh. You know what I'm saying? What the granddaddy wanted and what the current rules are.
It's different.
Different. So,
Wow.
and sometimes we can make allowances, and sometimes we can't. That's why we want to make sure we get all the information on the table
Right.
before we make any decisions.
An allowance would be nice because my grandfather wanted to keep it all, keep all this land together with his kids and grandkids. And I think Jerry is the first one after all these years that's coming up and wanting to build on the land, on the family land. And I think it would be an ideal thing because it would kill my grandfather to know if we can, the grandkids couldn't continue on.
Well, if we can get all the information together, there's a possibility.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Stacy Brown. I'm one of the descendants of the boys. That was my grandfather's, and I'm on the front of I'm his neighbor. And had a question as I looked at this. Our great-grandparents' house is on that corner right there in that green box. Well, it's about torn down. The storm got it. Is it possible at all to, if my uncles would agree and family agreed, that would be going ahead and torn down and they were able to build on that spot since that's already?
Maybe. That's the reason for our discussion, is maybe you need to go back to the family and the staff.
Landmark and see what's going on.
When we're not in this public meeting and all these things going on.
Right.
And have a discussion about what might be done.
Okay.
And I'm sure that Mr. Christopher Lawless over here, Ms. Karen Murphy, that in her part, they're the head of those two offices, and they will be tickled to meet with you sometime and see what might be done.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Won't cost you a penny.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing in regard to 4108, and I will make a motion that we defer that case until the applicant requests to be back on our agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. All opposed vote no. And the ayes have it. Okay, tell you what, we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes. We still have several cases to consider. I'm gonna call a 10-minute recess and we'll come back in 10 minutes and continue on. So we're recessed for 10. Could I have your attention, please? I'll call the meeting back to order. Our next case, I believe, let me make sure. Hold on. got, 09, but I.
09.
I think it's correct.
You're right.
Am I correct?
Yes.
All right, case 4109, Robert Franklin is requesting to use the property for a short-term rental. Property is located at 760 Flatwoods Road, parcel 3704 on Wilson County Tax Map 136. The property consists of 11.44 acres. It is zoned A1 agricultural. Get staff recommendations now on 4109.
Mr. Chair, applicant is requesting to use the property as a short-term rental. Staff has received a business plan stating how the applicant considers using the property. If the use is granted, staff recommends that the business plan be made part of the approval and put the applicant on notice that if they are to add any sort of structure or expansion to the use of the property, they will have to come back before the board for a plot plan submittal and a revised business plan approval. The business plan currently does not state the desired number of guests allowed per stay, nor the number of bedrooms in the home. If granted, the board typically approves 2 tenants per bedroom to make sure the septic system on the property can serve the intended use without being overwhelmed. Staff will need the PERC records or the original number of bedrooms in the home to designate a maximum amount of guests. The business plan states that the caretakers are located on the same property as the short-term rental. The Airbnb short-term rentals are used permissible in the A1 zone district. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff can recommend approval with the applicant's submittal of maximum tenant amount or bedrooms. If the board approves the request, the applicant will have to make their contact information available to WEMA, the building inspector, and the county sheriff's department in case of emergency.
Okay, who's here to represent 4109, Robert Franklin? Yes, sir, will you come forward, please? State your name again for the record, please.
Robert Franklin.
Anything you'd like to tell the board, sir?
Yes, when we started out, this was an old dairy barn, and the building was falling apart. The cinder blocks were coming apart. We restructured the cinder block and put it back together. We made it a 2-bedroom. We used it for a pool house, and we kind of went over budget, so we did an Airbnb with it. We didn't know that we needed license and everything. We thought that the Airbnb license was sufficient, so we went and got our license. We got everything that's supposed to be legal that's required for an Airbnb, and we're just asking, it's a short-term rental. It's not a 7-day-a-week like a motel. It may rent once, twice a month if we're lucky. So we're just trying to recover some of the money that we put into it.
Is this like a separate building from the home that's on the parcel?
Yes, it is. It was an old dairy barn in the back. It's about 300 feet away from the home.
And how many bedrooms? Do you live there on the property?
I live on the property, yes, sir.
How many bedrooms are in your house?
We have 3 bedrooms.
You have 3 in your house?
Yes, sir.
And you have 2 in the?
Barn, yes, sir.
You have 2, so 3 and 2, okay. And do you have any idea about the septic? What it is approved for?
The septic, I was told is a 1,000-gallon tank. It was pre-existing. It was there already. We just tied into the lines.
Okay.
So.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the applicant, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
You said it was a 2-bedroom. Do you know how many square feet the dairy barn is?
It is.
Or the livable space of the dairy barn that you've all remodeled at least?
It's 14 by 6 feet. So that's what, 800 square feet?
Yeah.
Close to it.
Yeah, close to
About
it.
800 square feet.
In that case, Mr. Chair, we do have an accessory dwelling unit that's allowed on properties. It has a maximum of 600 square feet for livable space. I don't have an issue per se with renting out an accessory dwelling unit as a structure. This would qualify as an ADU because it's not attached to the primary residence. But that, again, does have a maximum square footage of 600 square feet, which this would exceed that. So you all would also need to consider a possible variance in the ADU dwelling size of 600 square feet if that were the case. Because this is not the primary residence being rented out.
In regards to the ADU, an ADU is only allowed for 1 bedroom though.
That is also correct.
Is there a full kitchen in?
There is a miniature kitchen. I guess they have a stove, a sink, and a refrigerator.
So there is a stove. A
Yes.
sink and a refrigerator, okay.
Yeah. The actual square footage of the structure is 840 square feet, so that'd be a 240 square foot variance for an ADU. And you'd probably have to put the stipulation on it that it also has 2 bedrooms in it, which would
Well,
go against our,
the issue may solve itself if the septic permits with 3 bedrooms.
that is correct, I just don't have those on in file
and-
currently.
Or 4. You'd have to have at least a 5-bedroom perk
That is correct.
for anything like that to work.
Okay, so let me ask you this, calling it a bedroom, does it have to have a closet to be a bedroom, or?
A bedroom, to my understanding, via building codes, is a door, a window that is accessible enough for a person to climb out of, and a closet.
Okay, well, they don't have closets, so I
Okay.
don't know if that.
But you're using it for bedroom.
Yeah, I'm using it for a bedroom.
And you're probably advertising it as a bedroom.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
what
And
I'm
the
saying-
amount of guests is 4.
It's sort of like my accountant told me
Yes.
one time, you can't unring the bell.
I understand, I understand, but
From what I remember, isn't this the home that's located on the property? Wasn't it built in the,
1840,
yeah.
it was
So-
built in 1840. We just bought the house a year ago, July 7th. We
So
tried getting septic records, and they don't exist.
We could not find records for septic. I usually, when there's an Airbnb or short-term rental comes through as a request, I try to look up the septic records if the applicant doesn't have them, and we could not find septic records.
So the best we could do is require a septic inspection.
Inspection letter. But I will tell you, in regards to the septic inspection letter, they do not come with a number of bedroom approval, nor will they ever, because the tank and the field lines are already there, they're already covered up. So they just basically say that, you know, there's no sewage on the ground. They state whether they could find a septic tank or whether they could find any field lines. There may be a small drawing in regards to a tank location and a field line if they find one.
Got you.
Nothing about capacity.
Nothing, because, I mean,
Right.
if the state doesn't have any records, then there's nothing except that inspection letter. And we do require inspection letters when they build houses and things like that, when they can't find records. But
Okay.
it does not, or never will, give a bedroom approval.
So this would be dependent on the perk records or the inspection being provided?
Well, the inspection letter still will not give a bedroom
No,
approval.
but it will at least,
It'll at least state that
There
they
is one.
found a tank and some amount of field lines.
right.
Okay, does the board have any more questions for the applicant? And does anyone else here wish to address 4109 Robert Franklin?
Well, I can state that the septic, I mean, we haven't had any problems with any sewage leak or anything like that since, we finished it in April, so what are we in, almost August? So, like I said, they had pre-existing, they had water hose, they had a toilet, they had a mop sink in the building. So, I'm just saying, there's no septic on the ground since we've been living there, and since we've been doing this. And like I said, it may be once or twice a month that people stay there.
Okay. Does
Okay.
anyone else here wish to address 4109 Robert Franklin? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Nicole Franklin. I'm Bobby's wife. I just wanted to say that since we've been doing this, the guests that have stayed there have just, just talked about how beautiful it is, how serene, tranquil, quiet, just, how they can interact with nature and stuff. So I just wanted to say something positive about it. So just while there's the time to talk. So that's all.
Thank
So
you.
you can go on Airbnb and read the reviews. It's quite nice.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, anyone else? If not, the public comment period on 4109 is closed. Turning to the board for a motion or discussion. Yeah. So he's over on his footage.
For an ADU.
Now, let's just say theoretically, I made a motion to approve the request, but only for one bedroom. Okay, so he couldn't use that other bedroom. And
Okay.
he wouldn't need a variance on the size.
Well, the language is written that it's 600 square feet of heated and cooled livable space, not necessarily has to be a bedroom or not.
But he, okay.
I don't know how, I mean, it's an old horse barn, I guess you could, I don't know how it's heated and cooled, if it's units, central units or not, you could stipulate it to it's one bedroom at 2 guests, and the other bedroom is considered non-livable by ADU standards. Now, that works on paper, but I can't guarantee that it's gonna stay non-livable.
Neither can I. Okay. All right.
Are we, for the most part, okay with the bed and breakfast in a accessory building?
Yeah, we don't have any regulation
Don't have
against
any-
renting
okay.
them out.
All right.
You know, my thinking is, we have a 150-year-old house with an uncharted septic system, at 2 people per bedroom between the existing house and the converted barn. We could have potentially 5, but it's over the ADU size limit. So if we limit him to 4 bedrooms, 3 in the house and 1 in the barn, then we minimize the impact on the septic and also get out of our problem with the ADU oversize violation.
Sorta.
Sort of. On paper, it's Chris.
Sorta.
On paper.
And I guess the fact that it's an older, like you said, an older barn, it's been there forever.
The
but it-
house has been there for that long.
Yeah, I was gonna say if there's any kind of grandfather status, but that doesn't probably apply to a ADU.
Probably doesn't.
Not unless
don't
they
know.
can prove that somebody was living in it for 50-plus years.
Anyway, turning to the board, do I hear a motion in regard to 4109? And if not, I'll move that we approve 4109 with the following stipulations. The business plan be made part of the approval. All of the other requirements of the ordinance in regard to a B&B are adopted into this approval. Number of bedrooms will be 1, and that the utilized space in this structure will be no more than 600 square feet. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion.
It probably goes without saying, but this would be just for a 1-year approval.
Excuse me, you're right. I need to add, it is a 1-year, we have to give time limits to these things. And the initial approval is always for a year. You'll have to come back after a year, and we'll see how things have gone, okay?
And you did put the septic letter in there.
No, I did not. Let me withdraw and rephrase.
Okay.
And I move that we approve 4109 with the following provisions. A, that the applicant receive a septic letter from the state. B, that the approval will be for 1 year, after which he'll have to make an application for additional approval. Business plan is to become part of the approval. All of the other requirements of the ordinance in regard to this use become part of the approval. This use shall be limited to 1 bedroom and 600 square feet of usable area in the structure. Now, Howard, you second that?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion. I hope I don't have to repeat it, and a second. Discussion. If not, all in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposition vote no, and the ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, let me understand is I have to get a septic, what?
State will come, you make application for an inspection, they'll come out and do an inspection and verify there's no sewage on top of the ground or any problem.
All right. Is
They're
that
not gonna
Ms. Laurie?
dig.
Is that Ms. Laurie? Because I'm applying for a septic.
Yes, it is Ms.
Okay.
Laurie.
Okay, well, I can
All right, next case is case 4110. Ken Woodson, on behalf of Scott Greenwood, is requesting a variance from the requirement of 600 square feet for an accessory dwelling structure. The accessory dwelling unit will be in an existing detached structure and will be 850 square feet. The property is located at 2000 Fellowship Road, Lot 6, Wood Investment Parcel 73.08 on tax map 138. The property consists of 5.56 acres and is zoned R1 residential. Get staff recommendations now on 4110.
Mr. Chair, okay, I need to amend my comments. The applicant is requesting a variance of, it states 100, this will be 205. It's a typo on my part, I apologize. Square feet from the requirement of the 600 square feet for an accessory dwelling unit. The variance will allow the proposed accessory dwelling unit to be 805 square feet. Accessory dwelling units are permitted in the R1 zones, however, the request exceeds the 600 square foot maximum. Therefore, given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval of this request. With your permission, I do have 3 letters that were submitted to me, one of which was submitted to me by the county commissioner of the district, and he asked that I be able to read that on his behalf, but I need your permission to do that.
Go right ahead.
This letter is from Jeremy Hobbs. It says, Christopher, this email is regarding the residents at 200 Fellowship Road. Scott Greenwood lives in my district, and his daughter was in a horrible accident a few months ago. The accident has placed her in a wheelchair, and she requires special assistance along with other accommodations. Scott has worked for the Wilson County government in the past along with the Tennessee Bomb and Arson Squad. I'm reaching out to you and the committee to please take all steps necessary to make sure the Greenwood's family needs are met by the Wilson County government. Please show me in favor and support of this request, and please contact me if I can be any further assistance of this matter. Thank you and the board for your consideration. Sincerely, Jeremy Hobbs, Commission District 13. I have 2 other letters that were submitted. I'm just going to pass those down for you all to review during your deliberation.
Okay. Who's here to represent 4110? Yes, sir.
Good morning. I'm Ken Woodson with Access and Mobility. We're the general contractor on this project. The family, Scott and Holly and Madeline Greenwood, are here also. Our goal is to build out an existing detached structure into an accessible living space. That's what we do as a general contractor. We specialize in accessible dwellings and helping people with disabilities and accessing their daily lives from a wheelchair. I'm been doing this for about 25 years, and from my experience, I'm also certified environmental accessibility consultant, a certified age and place specialist. The single biggest thing that we realize with anybody in a wheelchair is the amount of space that it takes for maneuverability. The ADA recommends we have a 5x5 area for key points of egress and turning space in all the areas of living. In your entryways, there's 2 entryways in this structure. There's a living area, a bedroom area, and a bathroom and a kitchen area. So when we add up those accessibility turning radiuses, we're in excess of 200 square foot just for the maneuverability of the wheelchair, accessible routes, and the ability to turn around and function in their daily lives. So what we're asking is that we can increase the space from the minimum 600 square foot and use the whole structure, which is 800 square foot, because we really need this additional space for accessibility and their function in their daily lives. So we would seriously appreciate y'all considering approving this variance for this necessity and this what we call a hardship in their daily lives.
You stated your credentials as you started, so you're an expert in regard to access and mobility. Would that
That's
be
correct.
Okay. And it is your testimony then that this size build-out is necessary to accommodate the needs of your client?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else here wish to address this case? If not, I'll close the public hearing in regard to case 4110. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
205 square variance.
Oh, excuse me,
feet square variance.
to approve the variance as requested and amended, which would be 805 square foot total,
Yes, sir.
variance of 205 square feet. You agree, Mr. Cross?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion by the board. If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed, vote no, and the ayes have it. Thank you all for coming. Sorry it took so long. All right, case 4111, Chris Beret is
you'll do that.
requesting a variance from the height limit requirement of 22 feet for an accessory structure. The variance will allow the proposed accessory structure to be 25 feet in height. The property is located at 1769 Corinth Road. Smith property, is parcel 10.05 on tax map 120, consists of 17.73 acres. Get staff recommendations on 4111.
Applicant is requesting a variance from the height limit of 22 feet for an accessory structure. The variance will allow the proposed accessory structure to be 25 feet in height. The ordinance allows an accessory structure to exceed 22 feet if the building materials and roof pitch match that of the residents on the property. The zoning ordinance limits the height of residences on R1 zone property to 22 feet. Considering there is no pre-existing structure on the lot and given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval of this request. There is a home on the property. The applicant in this instance did not submit documentation to match the primary building material and the roof pitch of that structure.
Okay, who's here to represent 4111, Chris Beret? Yes, sir.
You did pronounce it correctly, so.
What?
You pronounced it correctly, so that's impressive.
Well, even a blind squirrel finds an acre.
I hear you.
Yes,
So,
name, please?
Chris Beret.
All right, go ahead.
So we actually have permits to actually build a house, and it would match the pitch. So we have a permit for both.
Have you submitted those documentation yet?
Okay, so you're saying your sworn testimony is that you have a permit to build a house and that the pitch and whatnot of the house and the accessory building will match?
Correct.
Okay.
Just like this.
So you have applied for a permit for a house?
Yes. My wife, it'd be under Tara Beret.
Okay.
Okay.
I just don't.
Questions
I'll
from the
make sure
board
I
for the
have that
applicant?
information.
No, that's fine. I wasn't privy to the permit for the house. The accessory structure, is it still 25 feet is what you're requesting?
Yes.
And it's gonna match the building material?
Yeah.
Can I see that real quick? Because if that's the case, they don't need to vote. Yeah, I know what that looks like. Mr. Chair, if the applicant is wishing to, and we'll double check on the permits, I just did not have knowledge of those. I just don't want you to approve a variance that's not necessary per se. But if he's going to, if it's his testimony that the building material on the pitch will match the primary structure permit, you all will not need to vote.
He has an absolute right to withdraw if he wants to.
Yes, sir.
So, are you telling him he doesn't need to be here?
Well, based on that information, I don't believe he does.
Will you refund his money?
I don't have the ability to do that without this board's say-so per se.
If you wish, based on what you found out in the last few minutes, you could request that your case be withdrawn and your application fee be refunded. You're eligible for that. Or you can ask us to go ahead and hear the case. It's up to you.
Why don't you just, can we just hear the case and just?
Can we hear the, absolutely.
Yeah, just, I mean.
Okay.
I mean.
So you're saying, I'll repeat this, I know I've already said it, you have made application for a building permit and you're gonna build a house?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Board have any questions for the applicant?
I got one. I think it was said that you wanted to match the height of the existing building?
No. This is, our house is going to be like a Cape Cod style house. Our peak on our house, our height of our house will be shorter than this, But the pitch on the roof, we're doing our very best to make it match just a regular pitch. So it's not, I mean, I don't know how roof pitches go other than, 112, 212, 312, like that.
That would
So
be
w-
correct.
Yeah, so we're trying to make them match. I mean, I don't know how particular you guys are, if it's off an inch
He's gonna
based
build
on
a
the
house,
builder, but
and the accessory building
that's our
will match
intent.
it.
Right.
Okay.
What,
As long as they go hand in hand, you can have that.
what are you doing with the existing home on the property? Is it being removed?
Once the house is built, then that will be removed. Correct.
Any other questions from the board for the applicant? Yes,
I've
ma'am.
got another question. So the house, the exterior will be metal?
No. The house, the auxiliary building will be metal. The house will be cement board and batten, hardy board.
Okay, so if his exterior is not matching the house, since your exterior is metal for the accessory structure and your house is not, he's gonna need the variance.
Okay.
It has to match
It
in
has to
material,
match
not
the
just color.
exterior.
Material and
Yes,
pitch
it has
and
to
slope
match
and
the
general
exterior
appearance.
with the materials and the roof pitch.
Gotcha.
So if it's not gonna be board and batten, he will need the variance.
Gotcha. Any more questions from the board or staff for the applicant? Anyone else here wish to address 4111? Okay. If not, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Turn it to the board for a motion or for discussion if we need to.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we approve this case. Based on the testimony given, he is going to match the roof pitch, but the exterior of the accessory building will be different.
Have a motion to grant the variance as requested. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second by Mr. Dial. Any discussion? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. The ayes have it. Thank you, sir. All right, now we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back to case 4105, Mr. Jennings, and case 4106. And to give you a little rundown, we heard both cases. We had a public hearing in regard to both cases. And there was considerable discussion about the commission as they passed the new lot size requirements. 80,000 square foot is from the original 40,000 square foot. They did not include any type of grace period. What else did we talk about? No grace period and,
The applicant testified that they had already started the process 2 to 3 months earlier. They had proof that they had hired a soil scientist and they were actively working on the project when it happened. Is that correct?
well, but we thought it would be a great idea if we were to wait for you to get back and hear any comments you had to say before we considered them further.
I've got a couple of comments on that. Let me give you something. I mentioned a couple of you, but not all. The county got sued over this case yesterday afternoon, over the change to the zoning ordinance, increasing the lot size to 80,000 square feet. It was brought by 2 local attorneys. There's 4 plaintiffs who are kind of spread around the county. But it does not have a restraining order. It does not stop us from enforcing the 80,000 square foot requirement. Now, that's just to let you know that there's more to come somewhere down the road, and maybe sooner than later. But it doesn't help us today. So the next thing we're talking about is what in the law has been talked about for the last 2 or 3 years pretty actively, and that's vested rights. When does a landowner have vested rights? And Christopher and Karen may have seen something that I haven't, but we don't have a real good definition of that right now. Clearly, if you have made an application to the planning office under an old rule, and when the law changes, I think you have vested rights. The question becomes, can there be vested rights without doing that? I think there can be, based upon what I've heard here today from y'all, that there has been money expended to pursue this on the 40,000 square feet. I think that's gonna be the key, and knowing the Chancery Court, if we went to court, I think the key is gonna be, hey, we spent money on this, we hired people, and that doesn't put us in a very strong position, in my opinion. Somewhere down the road, somebody's gonna be involved in a case that's gonna go to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court and define when vested rights begin and when they don't. Frankly, I don't want Wilson County to be that case. And I was taught very early in my legal career, pick only the hill you want to die on. And I don't think I want to die on this one, just to be honest with you. The facts are not, Rusty's heard me say this before several times, bad facts make bad law. And this set of facts right here is not the one, in my mind, that you want to take up on appeal and get it out of the road.
The slippery slope we get on is, for the folks that come next month and the month after. And one of these cases, the difference between 40,000 feet and 80,000 feet results in the addition of one lot. The other case that Mr. Keith has brought us goes from 3 lots to 6. So we doubled the size if we were to find in his favor. And then we have to think about 2 months from now, there's a guy here that's got 50 lots and he wants to make 100. And the other piece of policy we need to consider is how are we going to define as we move forward vested rights? Because before all this fine law takes place and unfolds that you refer to, we may have a dozen cases or more that we have to deal with, and we need to be consistent.
We may very well. I think I can offer you some help on that. And your comment about the slippery slope, y'all heard me use that before, and yes, it is. But I think the way maybe to slow down or perhaps stop the slippery slope after today is for this board to go on record and say, we're not going to consider anything under the old law after today unless it actually got to an application in the planning office or the building inspector's office, number one, or unless, number two, there is some type of restraining order that goes into effect, says, you have to. But I think we need to go on record and saying we're not going to consider anything after these that have not been formally applied for, either in the planning office or
So we're going to consider granting these folks relief, but nobody else?
Well, you're talking about the slippery slope. I mean, I think they've got a decent argument that they've met vested rights. I do. If I was on the other side, I think it's a great argument.
If I come next month and I've got evidence of vested rights, but you said you're not going to consider it, what are you going to do with me?
Well, we're putting a notice to people like Mr. Keith, who's a friend of mine. He hadn't had a good week with me this week. But we're putting them on notice, don't bring it in here.
Can't enforce that.
Well, we may not.
Well, actually, we can say a lot of things.
Sometimes you run a play. The law's just up in the air right now. And if you fall off.
What if we said we'll not consider any more of these cases unless vested rights can be demonstrated?
I'm good with that, but again, we come back to how do you define?
It's just a different.
Just another hurdle.
It doesn't say.
Another slippery slope.
It doesn't say we're not going to consider it, but I think you get into a problem saying we're just not going to hear it.
Okay.
I think that's a great bluff, but
Okay.
you're not going far.
So you don't want me down that hill either?
No,
All right. Okay.
I'll give you a better hill time.
All right.
But in order to be considered, you have to bring in evidence of significant, what is it we call
The vested
it?
right.
The vested rights.
Investment, movement toward your ultimate goal, in my mind. Where we come down on these things, as y'all know, guys, we're the government. And when things balance out and you've got private citizens and the government, usually the government loses. And so I don't think we want to lose on these two cases from what I know about it. What you've suggested is very good. I'm hopeful that we'll, somewhere down the road, we'll get a definitive decision. But right now, I don't know of it, and the definitive decision could very well be the case that got filed yesterday to a certain extent, but I don't think it will be for a reason I mentioned to the chairman, perhaps another. So I'm not prepared to say that publicly. That's a strategy issue as opposed to something.
Yeah, I also consider the commissioners, because they have a difficult job, and they were trying to address an issue, and they did address the issue.
They did.
But, of course, hindsight being 20/20, I think that a grace period would have been.
Might have been in order.
Might have been in order. And on the other hand, though, I don't think I would be tickled as a commissioner if we took took a very liberal approach to these type of requests. You know, we worked hard to get this done, and y'all are just up there voiding it, and you really didn't have any business doing it. Yeah. Does somebody else have something they want to mention?
Let me make sure, what you was talking about, it's not based on money spent, but based where you were in the process, correct?
Yeah, and
Because
I think that money spent becomes one of the facts to
That's
prove
part
where
of
you
being
were.
vested, is you got money, you got your money involved with it.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Well, I think both of you said the same thing. Where you are in the process, yes, is important. If you spent money to get to that process, that's a fact that supports where you are in the process.
I mean, if you just talk to a bunch of people, but you ain't never cut a check on doing anything, but if you actually wrote a check and you've had people come out and you've actually spent money on it, to me, that would be more vested in it.
That's more pro-citizen than it is pro-government.
So let's talk about one more little thing. Now, because we tell people all the time, they'll come up here and they'll say, you know, I need to do this because, you know, I need to get some money back, or I need this number of lots because that's what makes the numbers work. And we tell them, as we've been taught, that, you know, financial positions are not a valid argument for this vote. But now we're saying they are.
In a different way. The example you just said is financial interest for the future. I got a chance to make this much money. What we're saying here is financial interest
Already
it's already
invested.
been spent, yes.
I'll buy that.
The case you referred to was filed, is it where they filed a case trying to keep it at 40,000?
Yes, in effect, it says set aside the 80,000.
Okay.
And one of the things that bothers me about that case, seriously, is they've raised the inverse condemnation issue. That if the county is going to do this, back to your example, Mr. Chairman, if the county is going to do this, you cost me some money by decreasing my ability to make money off my land off the size lots, and therefore, county, you just bought my property. That's something we got to talk about. But I think, as I mentioned to you, I hope we don't have to do that.
Yeah, I don't think it'll go.
Not on this case.
One more. I can see this first case, 4105, where it's affecting just a lot, it'll be 2 lots. But I don't know that today that we have enough opinion or education, because we're gonna make a large impact on this 4106. So, just scenario here. If we say we approved the first one, and did not approve the second one, is that an issue? Or we deferred the second case till a later date?
Depends on how you differentiate between the two fact plots, in my mind.
But deferral is an option in the second.
It's always an option.
Okay.
But the facts of the cases appear to be identical.
I don't think the impact is identical. and we're looking at an ordinance that the county passed, and we're to follow unless we see some kind of exception. I'm trying to argue, it's just
No, this is what we're here
that
for.
last
We're arguing
one's
now.
gonna make a big impact
But if we defer, what are we deferring, 2 or 4?
until we have a more defined legal opinion or whatever. And
I don't know when that might be, but
yeah,
let me say this.
I'm just throwing it out for discussion.
The comments that I'm making should not be indicative of the fact that I don't think the county has the right to do this. I'm going to defend that. That's my job, and I'm going to defend it. I guess what I'm trying to say to you is let me defend them one at a time and not combine them 2 or 3 more at the same time, where I kind of have to take opposite positions. Yeah.
To add a little clarification to Mr. Crockett's question, the difference between them is in a planning purview is the one is for 1 lot into 2, which would be an administrative affirmation plat. The 6 lots or the 3 lots even would be a major, what we call a major plat that would have to go before Planning Commission as an agenda item and would have to be submitted on or before the deadline. The 2-lotter can be submitted at any time without a deadline, and we'll review it in-house as an affirmation. The 3 or 6-lotter has to be submitted on or before the deadline and be placed on a formal agenda. I don't know if that helps clarify anything for you.
So could, based on, and I don't know that I understood it all, but based on just what he said, could we approve one and deny one based on the difference that he just gave?
Well, again,
Or is that getting in a slippery slope?
maybe getting in the weeds. You're gonna have to come up with some, in my mind, some really good reasons to differentiate between the 2.
I thought maybe Christopher just gave it.
Well, based on the application we got, and the testimony that was given,
Right.
I don't see the difference in them. I don't see that there's enough difference to it.
Right, it's minimal.
It would be minimal. Now, yeah, one's adds 1 lot, the other one adds 3.
Right. It's not like one on 100 or one on 500.
And
Very little
I personally applaud the commission. I agree with what they did. But what they did and what we've got to do today are 2 different things.
Yep.
Okay. Let me first off make a motion that, to clarify a board position. And that motion is that this board is considering these 2 requests and any future request only based on the fact that it has been reasonably demonstrated that vested rights have been established. That's a statement of policy, and I'm going to make it as a motion that we state that formally. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no. Now, we're going to go back and pick up 4105. We have had a public hearing, and we've closed that public hearing, and we've had significant discussion, and we heard from Mr. Jennings. So in the case of 4105, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we approve case 4105 based on the testimony that's given.
That says vested rights.
Vested rights, yes. And based on the fact that the testimony given here by the applicant, that there was vested rights as far as money and or whatever, it was started in January or whatever ahead of time. And I don't know that it amounts to anything, but I would consider the applicant that testified to be an expert in that field as well.
So your motion is to approve 4105 based on the fact that the applicant has demonstrated that the rights in such an approval have been vested?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion by the board. Okay. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. And the ayes have it. 4105 is approved. We're going back to case now 4106. We have had a public hearing. We have heard from Mr. Jennings in regard to case 4106. Do I have a motion?
Can I ask a question first?
Absolutely.
Do we want to make the first motion as the previous case about vested rights?
I stated that as a board policy.
Okay.
So I think that sticks with us from now on
Okay.
until you vote to rescind.
Okay.
All right. In regard to 4106, do I hear a motion? That's a good idea. Why don't you go ahead and do
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case 4106 based on testimony given and that there were the vested interests.
that? Okay, have a motion to approve 4106 based on the fact that the applicant has shown that rights have been vested. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Dial. Any discussion? Not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no.
I vote no.
Oh, wait a minute, whoa. Okay, I'm gonna have to have a show of hands here. In regard to 4106, the motion has been duly made and seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand. And I have 3 in favor. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Have 2 opposed. Motion passes. Okay. That completes our regular agenda. It was advertised that we have an election of officers. I think, Karen and I have talked, I think that's really supposed to occur in August, but since we advertised it, we can go ahead and do it. So, the floor is now open for election of officers.
Nominate Trustee Thompson for chairman.
Well, why don't you just nominate a slate, we just vote one time.
Okay. Laid it on out there.
Is that motion to just keep the same officers?
Unless somebody else wants vice chairman.
Anybody want to do anything different? You're welcome to.
Unless somebody else wants vice chairman.
No. Everybody in favor of keeping the same officers, vote aye. Aye. Any opposition? I'm sure we've got some, but they did something, yeah.
Was there a second in that?
Yeah,
Who was the second?
I'm not sure.
Mr. Dyer.
Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, he's going out with a bang.
Yeah, you said Dow second.
Okay, yes, sir. That, I think that's everything. Christopher, do you have anything else?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
I don't have.
We are adjourned.